Sharon and Lee. You know, you're not voting.
I think it's on
Yep.
Yeah, these when they're warming up.
Yep. Thanks.
They're grateful. Oh, okay, that was good. Oh, okay. Yeah, anything complicated. Hi, Dr. Lang. Hi, Dr. Lang. Hi, Dr. Lang. Hi. No. But
Ready to roll?
that's,
Taxi off? Okay, here we go.
So I have.
I'm going to call to order a vacation for November 7th, 2023. We're going to start off with some announcements.
They're in the record, so we don't need to do
Okay,
that,
right.
so.
Okay. So we're going to start off with the first event tonight. I want to thank all the members of the Hastings and Hudson Volunteer Fire and Ambulance Corps for attending this evening. We're going to start off with some background on a law that was passed last year by New York State, which is a partial tax exemption for volunteer firefighters and ambulance corps. Some background, sort of the highlights here. New York State has, over the past 20 years or so, suffered a drop of about 25% in the number of people who are volunteering for fire and ambulance. And then at the same time, facing a call volume that's increased. There's a sort of official, if I get this right, official call reporting system that the number of calls has increased by about 25%. And so it's been a goal of New York State, which put together a commission to recommend measures that would be taken to increase participation in volunteer fire and ambulance. And what we're considering moving forward tonight is that tax exemption. There's a memo. Do you want to give the details of that? Because you might know it better than I.
Sure.
But is that all right? So
Yeah,
we're
sure.
considering this, these details of the
Yeah,
exemption.
so I did share a memo, and just again, I just outlined, as Alex mentioned, that there now has been in New York State last year, late last year was introduced, allowing for the board to enact an exemption for our volunteer firefighters and ambulance workers. And, I think, as Alex laid out, I think there's, it was prompted by, what they were seeing in terms of the amount of volunteers and the amount of calls. So, what you have before you today is simply just laying out, the percentage, what it currently would mean. What we understand is the current amount, just as a background, the Village of Hastings does currently provide this. And then we would be, making a recommendation to also adopt this resolution, which then would be, I believe, effective for like next year's tax rolls at this point. So the fact that the village already had, the current members, and as you can see in the memo, there's some criteria about the minimum service requirement for this 2 years and such. And in terms of, there's language in terms of if beyond, if a firefighter or EMT had served for over a certain amount of time, they would have a lifetime exemption. Well, that's kind of all spelled out in the memo in terms of, in addition to the current folks, like what is that, like, how long is that for? And you can see there's some service requirements, and for those who serve, pretty much a lifetime, then they would carry that on after their service was completed and also there's a provision for the exemption to continue if the member were to pass in service, then that benefit would continue with their unmarried spouse, if that would be the case. I think in the memo I laid out that currently 29 members are receiving that credit currently through the village, so of course that would be the same for us, and then we're also anticipating a growth in that number. We're hoping a growth in that number. So we, I did kind of, include that just, as assuming we'd have at least 10 more members or so in the next few years, or possibly a little bit more. But as you can see by the dollars are not significant, in terms of what the impact for to give it, I mean, it's not a huge exemption, it's 10%.
$50,000 or the
It's
check
about
burden
50,
is shift,
50,
yeah.
yeah, $50,000 shift. And as I mentioned in the memo, as we had spoken about with the senior citizen shift, I think the average home currently, the average value of a home in Hastings is, I believe, $875,000 or so. And for a person with a home valued at that, it would be about $30 more per year.
Yeah.
And again,
And also, just some additional background, if I can pick that up, this community is lucky to have pretty robust participation,
Yes.
as we can see this evening, but a lot of our very local communities are going in the opposite direction, including the other river towns who are, at the verge of having to professionalize their firefighting or have done away, in some cases, with the ambulance corps. So we have a very different, luckily, issue here, but it's, as I was speaking with Ms. Safferty, the old fire chief, all over New York State, it's a real issue. We're lucky to have what we have here, and so this is, in support of that.
and the last note I'll make, and I don't know the exact numbers, but I know that both the ambulance and the fire are here at this complex or at both complexes because we rely so heavily on them. I mean, we have students, adults that are in need of medical help constantly, and as well as, drills, emergencies in our building. So, I mean, even beyond that, the school benefits, I mean, at no cost, quite frankly, to having a real level of service that's pretty unbelievable. I mean, I felt like we had an emergency and the phone was down and there were people there. How did they get here so quickly? So, we are very fortunate because, again, as we know with medical emergencies, especially involving children, like those minutes are so critical. So I think it's, as you said, it's important for us as a school district, we need that, we rely heavily on that number being as, hoping that people.
I mean, I think from the administration standpoint, for us, it's a very strong recommendation to do this procedurally. You need to discuss it tonight, then there would need to be a public hearing for state law in December. But just here, clearly, the administration is strongly recommending you adopt this, but you need to do it through the proper process.
Right, so what we would say is we would be looking for the board to tell us whether we would be bringing this to, I believe, is it December, what date is it? December 19th, the plan would be to have a public hearing as we do, similar with the code of conduct, in the beginning of the meeting, with the resolution to be adopted that evening.
Oh, okay.
So it allows for public comment, period, in the beginning of the evening, but we would also be able to adopt it in the evening.
Okay.
I mean, I know we spoke about this last board meeting, and it was, and I, when I was walking in, I saw a couple of individuals coming in, and I said, if they listened to the last board meeting, they would know that we were actually talking, all of us, in favor of supporting such incredible individuals that we all know we need. I wanted to ask, I'm going to support it, as we spoke about last time, but I wanted to ask two clarifying questions that some community members wanted to know about as well. So it means that if you volunteer in any of these services, for 2 years, you get this kind of discount, and it gets passed on to family members, correct?
Well, it's for the primary, homeowner, right? But then it would only be passed on to
Spouse
the family, the
and
spouse,
kids.
if in fact the person were to die during service. It's not,
Okay.
so I mean, that's,
So after
that's
2
okay.
years, if an individual doesn't continue in the service,
then they would not receive it any longer.
It will stop.
Correct, yes.
so once they are still continuing, they get to receive it.
And then there is, I
After
believe
20
it's,
years,
or
I
after
guess.
20 years, it.
Like a lifetime.
Correct, if they've
Right.
served 20 years.
If they serve 20 years, that's when they
Yes.
can pass it on to the spouse, or after so the question is, if 2 years,
Yes.
they serve for 2 years,
Yes.
and something happens, it goes to the spouse, and
Correct.
for the spouse, it to be lifetime, for the spouse and children to be
Right, but it
lifetime, because
would-
they are not serving, right?
Correct, but I mean, the person would have had to have died in the line of.
In the course of their
Duty.
Yeah, line of
service.
duty, yeah. so,
Okay, got it. I just wanted to
yes,
get that.
so but in the language, even the resolution in which you would be passing that language, it would, I put it in the memo, but it would also, that would be reflected in the resolution that all that would be stated, so, you know, how it would work.
Jody, you had a question?
Yeah, obviously I will absolutely support this, and this is something that we should feel so proud of, the people in our community who give their time and more than time. It's really a huge skill and a labor of their devotion to the community. And I feel proud that we could do this. My question, Maureen, is this the most that we can do financially?
I believe it's capped at 10%.
Yeah, it's capped at 10 for now.
By the government?
Government.
The government, yeah.
Government, yes. I mean, that's, the state, that's how I mean, I could inquire, but that was my understanding, it was a cap. Similar to the senior citizen grid, I mean, arguably in this area, you could argue that that's the same grid for the entire state. So we had no control over like the ranges of those incomes. So I get my guess, I believe it would be the same for this resolution.
And then this evening, I would be remiss, I had specifically meant to mention that we have a board member who's away dealing with the death in the family and wanted us to note that she really misses being here, and she looks forward to voting on this when it comes up in December, Marie Lennon Santana. So as part of this, I invited current Chief Brian Schnibbe and ex-Chief James Safferty down just to provide some background, some information on their perspective on this.
Just to, well, obviously thank you for having us tonight. As you can see, about, well, maybe a little less than a tenth of our membership is here. It's a pretty good number of, pretty good indication of how robust we are in this little town in the southern part of Westchester. That's something that this legislation hopes for us to contain, to maintain and retain membership, which is a huge thing for us. Mm-hmm. My name's Brian Schnibbe. I'm a 21-year member. I'm the current chief. I'm a proud graduate of this fine establishment, that's 2002, as many of us here also are. Just to give a quick overview of the department, at least for the record, I know most of you are pretty well versed in it already. We are 100% volunteer, so everyone here is on their own time, and we go on calls 24/7, 100% volunteer. We hope to obviously continue that tradition into the further along our 147 years that we already have. We do our ambulance corps, which is a major part of our calls. It makes up the majority of our calls, a higher percentage than fire calls. We do about 1,000 calls a year, and the majority, maybe 60% of those are EMS calls. We do have a great relationship with the school, and we love the support here. I know most of you personally, which is great. Jimmy's going to come up and kind of give the overview of what, how we feel about this legislation. And but other than that, just thank you for having us, and we appreciate the support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, James Sarfati, Deputy Chief, Hastings on Hudson. I'm a over 28-year member of the department, served as chief a number of years ago. As we presented to the board back in the spring, the importance of this legislation is really crucial to recruitment and retention for members in this department. And this is, again, the state and Governor Hochul recognize this. This is a recruitment and retention in the volunteer fire service is very important. Statewide, the numbers have been declining quite precipitously. A number of years ago, there were only 30 counties in the state that had some sort of initiative to do this, and with Governor Hochul's signing of this legislation last December, it is now statewide. So it's important that now this legislation is unified across the state. That everybody's pretty much on an equal playing field, which is very important. In terms of recruitment and retention with the department, in order to become an interior firefighter in New York State and in Hastings on Hudson, members are required within a year of membership to take the New York State Firefighter Training Course, which is approximately a 3-month training course that's offered up at the training center in Valhalla. By the same token, to become an EMS member, members are required within the year of membership to become EMS EMTs. Again, that's over a 3-month course So it's it's 2 or 3 days a week plus weekends. There's written exams, there's practical exams, so it's not an easy thing to be a volunteer in New York State and in this village. We require a lot of training, a lot of continual training, annual certifications, both for the EMS members and for the interior firefighters. So, over the past number of years, we've noticed that the members we're getting, not so much younger members, but homeowners with young school-aged children, established members that are working full-time, and they feel compelled, and thankfully, we get them to join the fire department. It's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing to be working 40-plus, 50-plus hours a week, come home, go up to the training, get that done, and have a family life. It's a hierarchy that they have to get your priorities. But you can see here, we have a very dedicated department, and that's reflected in the response times. We have one of the quickest response times in terms of EMS and medical within Westchester County. As the chief mentioned, we're over 1,000 calls, both EMS and fire, so we do a lot. And again, this and your support is very important to keep this department strong. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments that anybody has to raise?
This is when it's great to be on the board.
Yeah.
So to confirm, it'll be brought back for a public hearing on which date, Melissa? December 19th. All right, and at that point, the recommendation from us to the board to adopt this will be up for your vote.
Yeah, excellent. So thank you all for coming to speak to us, and thank you all for coming to be here, okay?
You can stay.
You're welcome to stay.
Probably the most
We
interesting
haven't
part.
had anybody come.
Oh, that's true.
I already voted.
Thank you.
High stakes election, very much.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Yet another thing to take on in your busy life. That's so sweet. Alone again, naturally, you know.
It's okay. It's okay. Alone again in our natural state. Unvisited, but by this
Discontinued, we don't have any audience.
panopticon.
That was very exciting.
Maybe they'll all come back December 19th, you know. Have another, like,
Probably
full
that's
house.
when they should have come, actually.
Maybe they thought we were voting tonight.
Moving on to update and district highlights. Anything you want to bring out?
I would just, for the board, and it's in the public record now in the document you can look at, I did give you a little advance ahead of the public on what's here from the lessons, preliminary lessons that Amy Kazis and I took from our 3 days over in Bronxville, looking at their 10-year-old Bronxville Promise, which is, but I knew about it before I, crossed over to New York State to be superintendent. It's how well-known the work has been there. There's a lot to learn from there. I gave some indication to you in a memo on Friday and now to the whole community, for those who read this, as to some of the indications of what can be learned and what we can do. Visibility, simple and clear visibility is a big takeaway, and so we've already begun working on some of that thanks to Dr. Szymanski and Jackie Salviano, and we'll be doing more of that. Just one thing I'll note is it's clear that they are 10 years in, might have been 5 or 6 years in, 7, 8 years before they really had the extent of faculty ownership that would lead to, for example, now layering in aspects of the promise to teacher evaluation and all of that, because you really got to have teacher ownership before you get that close to the cloth, if you will. And similarly, a lot of creativity around electives and other coursework. They're now trying to say, where do the elements of the promise show up in, if you will, the core curriculum. So very present, very real, and also, more work to do. I will say, many of you may remember back in 2022, if you were tracking, the Bronxville Board meets once a month. I think it was February 2022. They had a very difficult board meeting, caught surprised by what was happening across the nation by really an ideological push. Not really based in fact, but an ideological push on the nature of the curriculum within Bronxville. And you can sort of piece into what I'm saying, what was going on across the nation of really people trying to politicize what was happening at a school board level. One of your former superintendents was superintendent then and was right at the end of his career. But he put together an advisory committee and brought into that advisory committee many of the people who've been at the mic, very aggressive. And the touchstone, the key point that they kept working from was the Bronxville Promise. And since then, they're largely yes. Does it mean that those who went to the mic all agree because there's some strong ideological feelings there in terms of, the kinds of things you're hearing. You're teaching critical race theory, all the things that just became poster language as opposed to real. But they worked through it, and I think they could work through it, and I would argue quickly. It was intense work in advisory committees, but relatively quickly, because they had this touchstone, they had this common place, and they made modifications in the Bronxville Promise coming out of that. And so I think, some would say, well, what's the purpose? Well, I think the purpose is it's something everyone can point to, and then when we hit these moments of crisis, you can keep pointing to it. Mm-hmm. And if you're flexible as a leader, and hats off to Roy, that able to work with it and do that. Last thing I'll say is we're off school Friday, and that's to honor our veterans. Wonderful ceremony yesterday at Hillside with veterans brought forward there, as has happened now for, I think it's the 7th year doing that. And so a little surprise coming Thursday. I think I'm going to put out a little personal reflection on Veterans Day, layered with some things that Jackie Saviano and others have picked up from that event. So I think it's really important that we really take a moment, to honor our veterans. And I tucked a little bit of that into my Friday letter that as different as we are and we're struggling with differences, every veteran I know comes together across those differences because there's a deep commonality there, deep commonality. And so I think we have to keep looking to that and reminding ourselves of that. So my little personal message coming out, if I can get it to work Thursday, will kind of speak to that. So.
Thank you. Good points. Thank you. Moving on to our administrative reports from our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction, Dr. Szymanski. Hello.
Hello.
Anything you want to highlight from that? Because they're in the record here.
Yeah, they're in record. I did want to point out a couple of things. So you'll see some elements of the portrait being brought to life in the administrative comments. The last time we had a board meeting, there was a question about the discussion of the war and where that was happening or not. So it is being actively discussed in all middle school and high school social studies classes. Greg Smith and I had a conversation about that. So that is middle school, high school, varying degrees. And the topics of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia are being explored within the middle school Courageous Conversations classes, and that's through a conversation with Janice. Mm-hmm. And Janice is also meeting with elementary school teachers to create Sparks lessons that are focused on religious bias. So that is in process. So I wanted to make sure that I updated everyone on that because I just didn't have enough information to present something more comprehensive. So I was careful not to misrepresent. I did want to clarify that. The other thing I wanted to point out, and Bill referenced this the last meeting, once the planning for all 3 buildings has been finalized, there will be a presentation there. And then finally, In accordance, some of you were on the board a couple of years ago when we received ARP ESSER funding from the state. You were eligible, and there was a consultation and collaboration process, and I had to create a plan for that. And so I'm just providing an update, just so that we can have that ongoing discussion process and collaboration process. So in accordance with the original plan, funding's been used for universal screeners, which were Star Renaissance and Panorama, that's coming out of the pandemic, the DEI coordinator role, and our math interventionist position, and that was in alignment with the original plan. And so this grant runs through September 2024. We have approximately $125,000 remaining to spend this year. We intend to use it as we originally planned. So we're planning on putting the remainder of that amount towards the exact purposes that we originally came up with, and we just wanted to provide opportunity to invite any questions or comments from the board, from the public. I know we don't have the public, but it's in here as a matter of public record.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Moving on.
Yeah, I just want to provide 2 updates of just upcoming things. We mentioned one of them earlier in the facilities meeting. The solar installation to both buildings is set to begin December 1st.
Oh, nice.
We'll be sending out notification just to remind people, just so they're aware because there will be scaffolding on this building and at Hillside, and Joe and I are coordinating with the contractor that is in charge of this project. So, just anytime, we just want people to be aware there could be a little bit of, around the building, a little bit of, you'll see construction vehicles and things during that time. And we will continue to provide the board an update on, the schedule and when we anticipate that to be complete. So we're happy to see that moving along. And also, just on that note, interestingly enough, a lot of other communities are attempting outside of Hastings to get some solar projects moving, and they're actually, we're very fortunate that we've kind of gotten
Ahead of the curve.
because there's like infrastructure hookups with Con Ed and different things beyond just the solar that needed to be done, and we were fortunate that all worked in our favor in getting this moving
It's good to be
along.
first in line, right?
It is good to be first in line, yes. And then the other, this is just a date to put on everyone's calendar. For those who may not be familiar, each year in December, we do have like an intergenerational dinner, a senior citizen dinner, and we do it on a night which is the dress rehearsal for the winter concert. This year it'll be December 13th. Typically we invite board members if they're available to attend, and what we do is we coordinate with the senior, Ann Rossick, who is I forget what her exact title is, but she's she works for the village and working with senior citizens and arranging their, recreation kind of things that they do here in the village. And we publicize it through Ann and through Andrus. We also have a bus that goes there and picks up some of the residents, and we bring them back here and we do a show. We do the show first, and then they come out to the lobby and we have a holiday type dinner. Most years we're 60 plus or more seniors, and we've been doing it for a very long time. There was a few years where for a variety of reasons, things didn't align for us and we were unable to do it, and then of course COVID, we didn't do it, but it is a very, very popular and well-attended event.
What time though?
It is, I'll send you out the flyer. I think we typically, because, we have to get the dinner in relatively early, I think. The show is at maybe 4 o'clock, and then it's 45 minutes, and then by 5, people have a plate of food in front of them. So it is really, really nice. And then all the students that are involved with the show, both, whether even some of our tech crew, although may not be involved, they'll come too. So we get a lot of those students come, and they mingle with the guests and able to kind of talk to them about what they're doing and all that. So I think that's what I said. It's the senior citizen dinner, but allows for our students also eat with them, and that it's a really wonderful event.
Nice.
So if you want to come help.
And you'll watch certain people think they should have been in the food service business, such as Maureen and Melissa Hardesty and Lou's the concierge. It's really remarkable. You all put on a new role. It's like,
No,
That's
it's a
funny.
nice, and, yeah, so I just was looking at the calendar today, I'm like, ooh, we got to get that
December 13th, you
planning.
said,
Yep,
right?
yep, so you'll be seeing that on our calendar, and, we'll be, I'll send you with the flyer that we put together for that event.
Oh my goodness, December is so soon.
I know it's so
I'm like,
soon, that's
Yeah.
why I can't believe it myself.
On here. That was the Wednesday, December 13th. Okay. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you for the
You're
update. Public comment, there isn't any, so we'll move on to our business items. Are there any questions or comments about business items 1 through 12? Second call, just to make sure. Are there any questions or comments about business items 1 through 12? No? Okay.
Nope.
Is there a motion to approve business items 1 through 12?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to placement and services for CSE and CPSE. Any questions or comments? No? Is there a motion to approve our placement and services for CSE and CPSE?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye, thank you. Personnel, we'll be considering this as a consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments regarding our appointments, amendments, resignations, or leaves of absence?
I might, on the appointments, I may just make a comment on item number 6. The Communications Work Group heard about this today. That's the CSE auxiliary personnel. I don't know, Maureen or Melissa, you want to explain that just to raise it up? Or do you want me
Good
to?
idea.
Sure. Okay, sure. So, as part of our communication strategy, the website is a pain point for us, and as we're going through the process of rolling out our new platform, one of the items that, beyond the look of it, that we wanted to ensure is always up to date and accurate and all the rest, is that we needed people who are just really dedicated at the building level, at the district level, to ensure that the accuracy of what is up there is constantly being, it's a model in which a lot of people had access, but without kind of having constant eyes on it. And the people who help support it, that is really not their role. Their role is more to kind of, if you needed something created,
Check.
or,
I
the
see
scroll
what you mean.
bars and all that. But in terms of, is this leave replacement, have they been added? Are they, is the employee directory up to date? Are the events up to date? Or is all the information up to date? And these, what we layered in was having some point people out of the building. They're, limited, it's really, the thinking is around 10 hours or so a month, and that these people would both serve as ensuring the accuracy of the information, up-to-date information, as well as helping those in their building if they need things that are put up, whether it be in the co-curricular areas for, like, just using the middle school, there may be something, that we want to ensure is on the website, whether club related, whatever the case may be. So they're like a point person for that building. And then they coordinate with the webmaster to ensure, and want to also, as part of this, we're really committed to trying to keep things standardized at, both at each building level, and because, that wasn't necessarily occurring, so kind of having it as a team approach and having them meet and ensuring that we're kind of, trying to keep the content and the navigation,
Consistent.
similar, yes.
Yeah.
So that requires kind of a team of people, and this model, we think, will serve us better and keep the, people can rely more so on the website than maybe they're currently comfortable doing.
That's great. Yeah, thank you.
And our very own Melissa D is on that team.
So we were
That's
at a
great.
meeting today that Maureen, Melissa was at, Teresa, Bill, where we talked about, and others too, but you said this, Maureen, but kind of in passing, I think it's important that people know, if people are watching, and even other people on the board, that we're doing really a total renovation of the website, like from top to bottom, and it seems like it's going to be great, and this is just part of then ensuring that it stays
Great, yeah.
moving forward, and people are on top of it, and it's consistent, and it seems like it's going to be a great improvement. I never had a problem with it, but
Yep.
I know a lot of people do.
Yep.
That's great.
So I think it'll be
It might not
terrific.
be on the top of the list, but it's on everybody's list. So,
Right.
You know,
That's
good. Yeah.
It's
It's going to touch a lot of people, so it's good. Any other questions, comments regarding appointments, amendments, resignations, leaves of absence? No? Is there a motion to approve our consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to minutes. This would be minutes from our October 24th, 23 meeting. Any questions or comments about the meeting minutes? Is there a motion to approve our minutes from the October 24th meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
4 of us.
Yeah, 5 of us. Huh?
5 of us.
It feels like 4 of those sometimes. Let's see, committee reports, facilities. Maureen, do you want to hit any of the highlights that were up there?
Sure. So, we're just going to give you a very short update, and we will then provide, for next time, we'll embed kind of the materials we went over tonight in that report area, but we'll just, being that it just occurred right before this meeting, really as the highlights of the meeting were that we were continuing to work through that phase 1 of the plan, which, just at a high level includes the boiler at Hillside, some slight maintenance projects with windows and such, and then also consideration for doing a building addition here and what that would provide to the district. We went a little bit more into detail tonight as the architects and engineers worked through their process. They were just updating the board in terms of, what the net gain would be, and then, of course, we'll be continuing that conversation about, the why and, how these classrooms will be used and why we're looking to do this renovation and what then that allows for us to do in terms of interior renovation. So there's an addition that's also provides space that's connected to freeing up educational spaces inside the building, and then what that could allow us to do at both the middle school and high school. We also provided, and this is just, I think, important for the rest of the board to understand, we're looking now at a bond vote at the earliest that would be closer to in April, if in fact we were able to kind of get our ducks in a row by that point. So, just kind of wanted to clarify that. We spoke very early on about, potential of a February vote, and we explained the reasons behind that. We want to take our time and make sure that everyone, we need to take our time, quite frankly, to get all the information that we do need from the architects, engineers, so everyone properly understands what we're, thinking about doing. We spoke at length. Our athletic director was with us tonight and kind of went over the turf, one of the projects, and spoke a little bit about the current programming and some of the challenges they've had, particularly this year, he spoke about. And then we did have a few people who did come and attend, and at the end of the meeting, we did allow for about 10 minutes or so of them to provide some feedback on what they had heard. And I think that, we'll provide the remainder of the details, but just at a high level, I wanted to hit that.
Sure.
That we're still in process. We're planning on having another meeting in 2 to 3 weeks, so this will be a constant, feature of both the facilities meetings themselves, and then, of course, then reporting up to the board. And I think, and Alex, I think possibly in December, similar to what we did last time, we'll have our facilities meeting, and then we will also so often have the architects come to the full board. So, there's the in-between work, there's work that we do without the facilities meeting with the architects and engineers internally. We have our facilities, and then we'll be also every other month or maybe every month having the architects attend board meetings to provide updates to the board as it's available.
So,
Yep. Let me just, a couple things on maybe Alex, and then we'll questions. So thank you for Maureen and Joe, I don't know, for moving this along. Just to emphasize timeline, we think maybe it's around an April vote, just so people are very clear on that. 2, we're still in a preliminary phase. There's more things being scoped out now. There's a technical term, but with the scoping, we also now need to get very I'm trying to get kind of out of my lexicon. It's now gone. We are getting, yeah, thank you, I was about to go there, but they may be listening and they won't want me to blame them for my bad speech patterns. So we have to get rigorous about cost estimation. And this is actually my third district working through significant facility and capital, so it's very normal and natural. One, we do our work in public. Two, we have to be cognizant of the preliminary. Three, we're scoping things out, still trying to refine it, but it's really important for you as a board and then the Hastings community that we start to get rigorous on the cost estimation. So you will be seeing soon a recommendation from us to let an RFP for the cost estimator.
Yes, so in addition, when you're proposing a bond, and even if there were to be no bond, to really have you need to have a tight understanding, because when we go out for a bond vote, that's the money we're authorized to spend. There's, no later, oh, it's a little bit more, it's not, that's not the way it works. So, as I had explained earlier, sometimes if your scope was, the architects, although they will provide some very preliminary cost estimations, that's not really their role. They're designers, they're engineers, they are not, cost estimators are typically people in the construction field. They're like, they could be like engineers, but they're more like on that side of the house, right? That's their expertise.
Right?
Excuse me?
They're directly in touch with purchasing.
Yes, they are, and they're it's like a construction manager who many times does have an engineering background, but they work in like overseeing construction projects, estimating, like that's what those companies really do. And it also helps us as we're, having a person check the estimates, check the details, as they're developing plans. Did they allot for, beyond just costing on what that they're providing, like the scope, there's times in which an architect, there may be somebody else to say, well, why wasn't this, why isn't there a line item for this or that? Why isn't this a consideration in that plan? That is really, they're kind of another expert to kind of ensure that plan is, everything that should be possibly need to be included in that plan is in that plan. And especially because the overall scope is not, it's not, when you do like a $50 million bond, like you do have a little bit more opportunity if things come in a little higher later to kind of value engineer the entire project to kind of get yourself back into a budget. We don't, we're looking at about 4, maybe 5 items that are very specific, like an air conditioner for the, there's a certain amount of wattage or tonnage that has to be to, cool that space there. And it's not like as though you can just say, oh, we'll just go with a smaller unit, because then it would be ineffective and it wouldn't work correctly. So, the things we're looking at are very, even a field or the addition maybe have a little bit of opportunity but we feel very strongly that we, want to understand what we're really talking about here. We are seeing locally, and this was a concern that, some people are opening up bids and the numbers are coming out different, whether high, low, or don't include everything they should. And I think most architects, they want you to hire one, and that is standard practice. So I think as we're going along, and we are concerned about the total dollars, we want to ensure that prior to putting something out and making a promise, that we could do a certain amount of work at a certain dollar amount, we want to make sure those dollars are as tight as possible, so.
And related to that, which maybe Maureen mentioned, is we understand the cost better, we can also think about how we structure the bond and recommend that to you.
Yes, that's right.
There may be some things that we can do out of other reserves. Not to get ahead of ourselves, but we have to make sure the hillside boiler is addressed. But that'll be with the cost estimation, we can better work with you on that.
Right.
And then, of course, we did talk about the turf field. I just want to stress to the community that we're actively listening, actively paying attention. And yes, 10 years ago, it was a struggle for Hastings regarding that. We are 10 years later, and our knowledge will be that much smarter and thoughtful and careful. There was a lot of good community outreach 10 years ago, as I've been told, so I want history to be accurate. There was a lot of engagement with the community. We will, again, make sure we do that same thing. And if we're recommending to the board, and the board chooses to go down that path, we'll be very clear what the rationale is, pros and cons. Some in the community may still disagree if we're going down that path, but, hopefully they can say, well, there's an opportunity to voice our perspective, and there's the process of voting. And that's fundamentally what we're structured as in this nation and should be. So, anyway.
Thank
So
you.
what I wanted to ask where, so I know that in terms of the athletic piece, it seems to be very thoroughly talked about, but the bond had other elements in it. So I know you mentioned a little bit of it in terms of the final classrooms, finalizing them. And also there was a line item for, I know we already voted, and I think it was supposed to be already paid for in terms of the budget for the special ed.
Yes.
Having the new space.
The life skills
Yes, the
space,
life
yeah.
skills space and all those things. So, and of course, these things with costs still going high, who knows? I saw the line item of more things, more money being added to that process. So my ask is that during the facility committee deliberations, if those specificity can also be brought out as much as the turf and everything else, right?
Yes.
Because that would help to know that, okay, this is the cost that will go to a final classroom
Yes.
built out. This is the cost that will be added apart from what was already approved and the money is already there. But this is the additional
Yes.
that is going to go to the special ed life skills, blah, blah, blah. That way there's the delineation and the clarity of what goes where.
Yes.
That would be helpful.
Yes, and yes, that's where, that is the way we would proceed, and I think having the cost, the other set of professionals to really help us will help us even drill down on those numbers and be as clear as possible without, having a crystal ball. But I just picking up on that, and we didn't speak about it tonight, but we believe that the money that's already been allotted for the life skills classroom now, because again, things, as we continue to work with the architects, engineers, and figure out and now have defined where now that space is going to be, which is still going to provide the space for the life skills, but it's just in a different location, that now the money that we have set aside for that will be adequate to do that. So in the new bond will not require money toward the life skills. There is some consideration for therapeutic support programs, but those are generalized classrooms that would be in the scope of the addition. But we will break down, but just to kind of cover all points, that these classrooms would allow for X, Y, for either enrollment, programming, what kind of programming, and what the why do we need this? What are, does that also not only help us today and then like how about 5 years? So all of that we're trying to flush those details out and the finances behind it as well.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good. Any questions or comments? Facilities? No? All right. Moving on, is there anyone who would like to touch on the recent policy committee meeting?
Go first.
Wait, I didn't send out an email that I meant to send.
Oh, I was going to ask if that went out.
I'm so sorry, I was just slacking.
It's okay.
You'll notice that the district code of conduct is not on here for discussion.
Correct.
So after the meeting, you had asked, Dr. Ryan had asked some additional questions to Suzanne Wolfe regarding like definitions.
Correct.
So then I followed up with Suzanne to see if we made any changes, changes, even if we made the minor changes that we were going to make, if it would be required for us to have a public hearing, which we would have to do.
Got it.
So since Maureen isn't here today and Doreen isn't here today, we're thinking of just bringing it back to the committee.
Got it.
Because then we can discuss the additional
details.
items that you were
Correct.
discussing with Suzanne, and then once we have it set with the committee, we can schedule a public hearing, bring it back to the full board.
Got it.
And,
To discuss it.
Right.
Got it.
Right.
Okay,
Because then we'll be doing it in piecemeal.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So now you can update the items.
Yes, you want to go?
We spent time with the district code of conduct and we paused on some of the definitions of one of the big pause we had was on the definition of race, and we didn't all feel like it was the best definition that it could be, and so we're going back. That's a big one.
Yeah, so.
And then we also had.
So, elsewhere in the document, the definition was robust and correct. It just wasn't in the
Robust
list.
was the word I was looking for.
In the list of definitions, and again, we should have, I should have caught that earlier before it got all the way through the process, so the list of definitions did not line up with the rest of the document. So even though the correction is simply bringing that material forward, it does require a public hearing on that. So again, that's why we'll bring that back to you as a committee. So I just want to be clear that it was in the document, that it wasn't consistent and coherent.
Correct.
So, I'm sorry, just wanted to.
Thank you.
And there was the element of restorative practice. We are mindful to choose words that doesn't spark those political stands, so we don't.
No sparks.
Yes, no sparks, no justice, no sparks. So the restorative practice piece that brings about a learning process for our kids. I know community members have been concerned that when misconduct happens, then all the spotlight is on the kids, when kids are kids, and they should be in a space where there is restorative, true empathetic process happening in order for them to use it as learning opportunities, not some tribunal processes happening to them. So this has been a concern. We all hear it in the community. So of course, the space that it gets housed was the restorative practice. And I think you brought the idea that instead of it just being on its own, it should weave through. I think the administration were thinking about it themselves as well. But of course, the board does policy stuff. So you raised that concern that it should weave through everything, and actually it was already a thinking process from the administration as well, to weave it through in a way that it doesn't become, I would choose.
Oh, the menu, yeah.
It doesn't become the menu
Column
item.
D, please.
Exactly. To choose. So I think that was one of the conversations we had. And then the other, so basically, again, with labels, people tend to politicize it. So I personally use the word human protective rights because that's a lot of what DEI work is about. And so we had conversations that would allow more of a tweaking. But like Melissa said, although it's tweaking, it's not a major change. That's what I want the community to know. It's a lot of tweaking, not a major change. It still requires a process. So I just want the community to know that it's not like everything is going to change. We just have to make sure that the terms are clear in that.
I appreciate Dr. Lang saying that, because this is the fundamental document to guide how we manage discipline. It is a reordering of materials already there. And so the documents that we are using, the discipline code for students, the restorative framework that have been out with families since August, that still is strong and clear. We're actually now coming back to get the code of conduct to line up with that. So I don't want anyone to worry at the board level that, wait a minute, are we sailing without that fundamental discipline guide document, if you will, if you get my metaphor. But no, we're fine. We just have to get it all to connect and line up and do it correctly. So bring it back for a public hearing and then have you vote again. But first have the policy committee work on it and get it true and how they want it.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to a first read of a policy. This is policy 6710 on purchasing authority. Is there any background on this policy? Or?
It's just an update from NISBA, just language exists, right? It's just the way.
Okay, it's a required policy, right?
Shall versus will.
Okay.
And I think it just
Right.
says like who in the district is typically the purchasing agent. And it's not like an individual, it's just like the position typically.
So it's an incredibly exciting policy.
As far as policy goes, it's not at the,
Yes, to Maureen it is.
To me,
any other
it makes her
questions?
dance, but the rest of us are like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe not this one, though. I don't know. Are there any questions or comments about policy 67? We're not voting on it, but just, in case anybody has any points of view on this one. No? Okay.
Seems like boilerplate.
Yeah, it seems pretty boilerplate. I agree. Moving on to agenda review. We're going to be at 11:20 for our next, is that right?
Yeah, the year is moving.
It is moving.
So it's straightforward. We do have a budget work session for you on the 20th. Maureen and I can coordinate on that. And we had done a similar pattern last year, some early indications of where things are, large scale, kind of the macro numbers, not the micro, just to begin to give you an indication. So Maureen and I will work on that in terms of what that might look like. We should, though, update this for the 19th to make sure we're showing the firefighter exemption public hearing on this. Great. Yeah, so that, we'll do that. And then just while we're in this agenda plan, we'll keep giving you updates on policy. We'll keep giving you updates as possible on the facilities and bond. If you look into the 5th, you do have an update on the development of the 24-25 school calendar, because I have been in process with some representatives, family representatives. It's the Inclusive Working Group. Am I getting my acronym correct, spelled out? The Inclusion Working Group, sorry, inclusion, close. So they've been very helpful in giving some feedback, and I will update you on some of that. But you as a board will not be able to vote on the calendar to what we've scheduled once we're into the new year, because we are waiting on some dates. But you'll get. I think it'll be helpful to get that update, and the community have an early update on what we're thinking about.
Okay.
So, right.
Thank you. We've reached number 13, board comments.
I just have a question. So in terms of the calendar, what is it going to, are we going to cater for the, like, is it going to be tweaked in a way to accommodate what we lost for the second grade? I mean, I know it's.
So I'm going to take your question very seriously and answer it with a smile.
Can you repeat your question?
So the question is, go ahead.
No, you say.
The question is,
Sorry.
how responsive, reflective will this calendar be of the various cultural and religious interests in Hastings?
Okay.
Did I get it?
Yes, you got it.
And so what I'm going to say is, wait till you see the movie.
Okay, I'll
So-
get my popcorn.
Yeah, meaning we can introduce that some in December,
Okay.
right? It's still some, and I'll in December explain the moving parts that may still be there. I hope you took my attempt at humor with still some seriousness. What we will be doing is doing a simple survey out that may be going out before then, just to get feedback and ideas from the community. Because last year, we had brought forward a calendar initially that did not include additional dates as it would relate to any cultural or religious observances. Board spent some time on that. There was public comment. And as superintendent, I made the commitment in this fall, and during this fall, to outreach and listen.
Yep.
And it's proven very efficient to do that actually through the IWG, and they've reached over to some other districts for some examples of surveys. We're very close to a calendar I think a lot of people appreciate, but we just want to still have some survey information from families about priorities as it relates to, there's some trade-offs. You know, does the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, how do you value that relative to bringing in another religious or cultural observance, if it's an option? The state has now increased those they require, so that's part of it. But that's all the little introduction we can talk about in December.
Okay, that'd be December 5th.
Yeah, and we're trying to make, when you actually see the final calendar recommendation and the vote on that, make that a smoother process than last year. That's what we're aiming for.
There's a big gap, too. I mean, between when it's presented and when we're supposed to actually vote.
Well,
In terms of the presentation, it looks like it's February 6th, and then we
Well,
wouldn't vote until March 5th.
I'm sorry?
I'm just saying, in terms of what's on here, it says the calendar recommendation is shared with the board on February 6th, but we're not called to vote on it until March 5th. So there's an intervening gap of time.
Yeah, and I think
which
that's a
will-
function of us having only one
Breaks,
meeting in
right.
February.
I understand.
Yeah, that's a good catch. I'm not sure, I mean, given the work that's been done, given what you may hear in December, if if BOCES and the state give us dates earlier, we may be able to bring it to you earlier.
I mean, that's oftentimes the tension, right, is that we don't receive those
That's
BOCES
the
data until
exact-
late in the game,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right.
And this will, again, we'll talk about December, but that's the exact tension.
Right.
That, we're very close, but we have to see what those dates are. And we also are estimating still the region's final date, correct, Melissa? So there are three authorities we're waiting on.
Sorry, what'd you say?
I'm sorry.
So we
Right.
don't know, we don't have the BOCES calendar.
Right.
Or the regions, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Finalized.
Lock it in.
Yeah, that's why it's often a source of consternation to folks as to why we don't act on it until later in the, because people want to know in terms of their own calendars, and we don't have the wherewithal to do it because we don't have all the information available to us, which is why the vote doesn't take place until the springtime. So it's not a function of like not being on the ball and not, trying to get feedback from the community. We're obviously willing to hear people's thoughts and feedback
And-
as they want to provide it to us, but we're kind of limited by that.
Yeah.
And let me, actually, thinking of this, we'll move on in 2 sentences. I think the survey feedback, it's not a vote, but it'll be instructive. As I look at the calendar now and look at the date of the 7th, we may want to have this discussion on the 19th of December, not the 5th.
Right.
Because I think it'll be most useful for you to have some of the survey, and I don't know that they're going to have that survey done by the 5th.
All right.
So we'll manage that. Melissa and I will keep an eye on that.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Any Board of Ed comments? No? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn our meeting?
So
7:05,
Take a screenshot. Selfie. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Wow.